Hi, my name is Bob Grunier, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So thank you for joining me this evening. Let me know if you can hear me. It would be great that I'm not talking to myself, as usual. I have a stonker of a cold. I have taken the view that I'm going to catch whatever my children bring home to me to boost my immune system, and so I will need to take an early call tonight. And really, the reason I am making this, in fact, before I start talking, can someone just confirm they can hear me? That would be great. I'll put the holding frame on. I would do if it was showing me. Okay, you can hear me. I've just got to fix one aspect. My presentation is not coming through at the moment. So let me just get that working again. Okay, we've got it there. So that looks good. Okay. Okay, great, excellent. Hi, Stuart. Hi, Coco. Hi, Gordon. Hi, Gordon. Hi, Corky. Hi, Ilias. Hi, Dan. Hi, Artifact. Hi, Henk. Great to have you in the room, everybody. Hi, who else we got? Bestoke Primer. Great. Hi, Adrav. If I get your name wrong, maybe we should have a Zoom session to try and get your names right. But anyway, great to have you here. Okay, so you might wonder what that is on the screen. That is the largest pumpkin I grew this year, and I cut it for the coming Halloween with my children today, and I thought it was an appropriate thing to throw up there because who knows what a Skirmion is? Maybe you do. I don't know really. But we're going to have a look at a lot of things that are claimed to be formed by Skirmions in terms of topological structures. We're going to have a look at those. But the first time I talked about Skirmion was a long time ago, and it was when I had realized that there must be some kind of monopole-like structure going on in the John Hutchison samples and in other Lena research. And I started to look at, how a monopole or a pseudo-monopole could have been formed. And the first thing that I kind of came across was some work at Aalto University. And if I switch there now, it was this one. And it was, I think, published in Nature or Physics Reviews. I think both, actually. And they had done this synthetic magnetic structure and created something that looked a bit like a monopole, and that looked a lot like this structure that we saw on the 10 yen coin. And it was this right hand side on the 10 yen coin which we found the little small balls of plasma, the micro ball lightning, that were eating their way across the copper oxide surface and converting the oxide into sulfur. And so that was showing transmutation from a subgroup of a macro cluster, which I believe created this overall structure, which may or may not have created this kind of analog of this synthetic monopole. Now, when I say synthetic, it's not kind of real. It's like a quasi-particle. And I think they went on to do this, which I discussed in another presentation called No Coincidences. And I was referring to this on the 1986 ball burn sample that we have from John Hutchison, where the structure had this core, and they had created this out of a few sort of how do we call it? Alkaline metal ion atoms, I think it was. Not many, but it was creating something very similar in terms of structure. And again, this was a synthetic electromagnetic knot in a three-dimensional skirmion. And this is also kind of like a skirmion type structure. So these were the first two times that I kind of mentioned skirmions in my work. And we're going to look at a lot of papers today, and maybe consider whether there's any sort of correlation with what we've observed in a range of systems. But I think I chose to actually come in tonight because, like, I did not feel good. But I chose to come in tonight because I have some good news that Dr. Roshinamas has applied in the last call for the fixing Fukushima with his vibration plates, which I showed a number of times in the previous presentation. Now, the thing about those is he didn't really have any idea how they were genuinely working, but that they did work. And so when he was doing some initial testing of them in, I think it was 2003 or whatever, he vibrated just basically plain water, and after a period of time he got a large range of elements. And if you actually go and look at that data, and I think it's actually published on Cold Fusion now, they've got an article on it, I think from 2013, I might be right in saying. But anyway, the elements that he observed are strangely similar to the elements we have observed recently when we are looking at our foil in our ultra experiments. So that's just something to bear in mind. However, when I went to visit him with Dr. George Eagley, we found very quickly that not only was it producing ultrasonics, although that may not actually be important, it's the most important thing is to have resonant modes. It was also producing these kind of strange radiation kind of tracks, which I discussed in the last presentation, which were only visible by a polarizing filter. And I think that actually might be relevant. I said I'd come to talk about how that might come about, and I'll do a little bit in this presentation, but it isn't the reason that I got the inspiration to buy that polarizing microscope way back when. But so what I want to do today is to try and come up with an approximate hypothesis for how the coherent matter is forming. And I think Ken Shoulders was talking about cavitation, and when he was saying cavitation is charge separation, and this is what causes it, it doesn't give me a lot to go on its own. And of course, Leclerc is often talking about the cavitation bubble, and everyone knows that these cavitation bubbles, in part because of Leclerc's work, has this property when they come to a surface, they have this reentrant jet that produces a vortex that does ion implantation and can even be used for machining. And he actually developed techniques for doing that, to actually machine precise holes in materials using the power of the reentrant jet. Now, what we found in Ultra is that there's something more subtle and that is self-organizing that's going on, where it appears to build and build. One could imagine that if it was just reentrant jets going on, that the material would fall apart. But you can actually see for extended periods of time these figures of 8 forming, and they, as we analyzed those under the scanning electron microscopes, we found that in the core of those figures of 8, predominantly, you got a range of elements apparently being synthesized, but at the very least, they are kind of fused into the aluminium, either bonded to its surface in a kind of almost sort of gradient way into the aluminium, or actually almost completely part of the aluminium. There are some other features that we saw, and we're going to have a look at a couple of those. But I suggested that this might be something similar to where you are able to create a coherent matter structure, and then we had these things that came out that might be like a coherent matter beam, as discussed in this 1999 patent from the previous work. And we talked about these things going on here, where this is in Dave Boutlier's experiment, and this is a number of frames of a pulse, in my view, of coherent matter that is forming this solitary wave, this soliton wave that it's coming out. And this is again in the Dr. Roshinamas. And again, you have these regular periods here, and here and here and here and here. So again, this looks like a solitary wave, a soliton. And these are clearly braided structures, So it looks like there's more than one source for the material that comes into this overall structure. And then we talked about this one being the collapsed coherent matter from a coherent matter traveling wave. And so the wonder is how these things go from what might be a coherent matter blob and then are fed into a structure that could take on these forms, polarize the steel in this case, create this braided form here in some sort of what looks like plasma. Is it plasma? Is it just the way that it interacts with its environment? And leads to this kind of braided and mixed structure here. How do these form from a coherent matter blob, whether it's a sphere or whether it's a more two-dimensional object? And that is the question that I wanted to ask myself. And if it's in the case of the work of at the ultra experiments, we are looking at something like this with a vortex pair. And the interesting thing, this was the first vortex pair that we looked at, is that on this side, on this particular one, it doesn't seem to have this peak in the middle. It's kind of looks pretty flat on the middle. And it has this structure coming out here, which we identified was a very vortical structure. But it's on this part. It's not on the edge. It's slightly set in from the edge of the overall ring. And it's coming out here in a twist. Is this important? Maybe it is. Over here, in this case, we do have what looks like a dimple, and it's blown up over here on the peak. It's got a dimple on the top, as well as this overall thing being a cone coming up to it. So this is a pit in a cone shape with looks like a flat bottom with a thing that's over to one side. And this is a cone with a dimple in the top. And importantly, I believe, the dimple has this S kind of shape. And we saw this also on the copper affected material by cavitation in an ultrasonic cleaner by Binjuan Huang from the energy department at Taipei University. Okay, so I did this kind of like quick mock-up of what I thought might be going on. And so you have your flat plane here of your aluminium. And I've said that I believe that these structures are very tolerant. So if these structures want to form on your aluminium foil, the foil will move up and down in the water column to accommodate the resonant positions of where these would like to form. And that these perhaps are spinning around in some way that they form these structures. Now, as I said, in this case, it looks like it's pretty flat on the bottom here, but it's not. It's dimpled in the middle here. So there could be the case that whatever is causing these things are able to take some slight different sort of way that they change the topology of the metal, depending on the state of whatever this kind of vortex is. And when we were looking at the Amasa vibrator plates, we found these two interacting structures, again, just like the figures of 8 that we are seeing here. But obviously this is a thick steel plate, so it can't deform so well, but it still forms these two structures with this very, very intensely focused central point. And here's another example, and here's another example where this clearly looks like it's trying to be on top of this. And we've seen this, and this one again, this different one is again trying to be on top of this. And we've seen these kind of situations with other linear experiments, like in the lion experiment. Now, in the center of one of these spots, I've gone in and zoomed much further in, and you can see the kind of damage, and it almost looks like it's doing this, potentially this reentrant jet damage when you look at this. However, there is this structure that I observed that almost looks like it's flown away. Now, we observed in our our ultra experiments, and I'm going to go to that now. We observed, if I can find it, we observed this toroidal bubble coming out and eventually ending up as a sphere, but it was clear that the toroidal bubble was spinning around, and what the people would call in the Skirmion world breathing, and it then formed, after the sound was turned off, a good firm bubble, and then kind of departed from the overall structure, and so it's this one here. So, and I've got the still frames here, so let me just zoom in there. So I'm referring to this, which is in ultra fingerprints, and you can see it discussed in the video. Here are these things spinning round, so we can say fairly confidently that although these topological structures on the aluminium foil are, how shall we put it, on a static area, and they are physically a dimple and well, maybe this is the cavity and this is the cone, but they are very clearly spinning, and we showed that they are spinning at extremely high velocity. Now this is this toroidal bubble that comes out. It forms a spherical bubble, and I have the still frames here. So we have this is with it on, and it's just a big blur, and then you turn off and it almost immediately forms this bubble, and the bubble starts to peel away and peel away. It comes around, forms some other kind of spherical object. It's down here, it's not quite so clear, but here we go. We can see the cone and the pit, and you can get an idea of the dimensions there. And in this case, this is a bubble, and it's not so clear, but it seems to move round this cone, and this is after the sound has turned off, and it moves around this cone, and it fires this helical beam into the top of this cone. So this is the kind of feature that I would love you guys to start investigating, because it kind of tells me that this bubble might not be all that it seems to be. It might be a lot more interesting, or there might be some residual vortex in here and it's sucking something out of that. Anyway, so you can see on these ones, again, this is a cone with a little dimple in it. This is a cone with a dimple. This actually has a hexagonal raised section in the middle, slightly different on this one. And so we've talked about this. And this is the same kind of structures on the project Omar, the Omar's vibrator plates. And we showed that different pressures led to diamond in the center, double diamond, i.e. magnesium in the vortical wings, and on the outside of those you've got quad diamond, which is chromium. So and this is one of the similar type of structures in the 225-day reactor of Alexander Parkhomov. And here you can see the vortex like nature going on here, and there's some very highly slowed down ones here where the things are going around as a blur. So anyway, we talked about this a good amount of time. So let's go back to what I'm showing you on here. So what I'm saying is that you have these figures of 8. This is on the Amasa vibrator plates. And a structure like a torus bubble has come away. And I'm saying that the torus bubble might not just be a bubble. It might be something that's containing some material, maybe even coherent matter material. And you can see that this is not only a torus, it has this poloidal rings going around it. So you've got toroidal movement, and then you've got poloidal movement in this as well. And you've kind of got this on the Hutchison sample, but this wasn't the first time that I saw this, because there was this, in my view, a coherent matter collapsed wave, as I would see it now. And it was, I shared this in 2017 in Copenhagen. And again, you have this torus structure at the head of this overall blob. And it also appears to have a little bit of poloidal sort of vorticity going on. And I think that's quite relevant. Now, I'm going to try and bring a few concepts together here. The idea of the toroidal bubble spinning around there, breathing, going in and out, and also the structures that we're seeing potentially formed afterwards, and the nature that we know that, well, it would seem, because in the Vega experiments in the Vega Valley, we are creating these crenellated iron-rich spheres, and we have observed those in Me 356, a crenellated sphere. We don't know whether that's iron, by the way, but it looks very similar. We've observed in the inside of the trees in the Tunguska event. We've observed it apparently on crop circles, although they've not seen if those are crenellated. We've seen it in other examples. We've also seen it in the Nova reactor, where we have microwave and dusty plasma environment there. And you will going to get self-organization going on in all of these things. But the key ones are, in my view, the Vega experiment, where we've seen these absolutely perfect FeO2, it would appear, crenellated spheres, and almost an exact analog in the Ultra experiment. And so, in my view, this is the magnetic core of a sort of monopole-like structure. And I've talked of the fact that a Bose-Einstein condensate in a Skirmion type structure here, and in a pseudo one here, but this is actually made of a Bose-Einstein condensate of alkali metals. This is classified as being a three-dimensional Skirmion, and it matches very closely to the structure, where you have this, effectively, this material in this area in the Bullburn sample, which is completely removed. And I'm actually going to go to refresh just a couple of slides from another presentation, the actual No Coincidences presentation that I did on that, so you can get a little bit more context for that. This is the original slides from that. So I used these cameras, and I got this shot here, and this is a close-up of it. This is an SEM and a microscopy shot, and this it shows that it's actually a cavity. It's been eaten out. The actual material has been eaten out of that. And in there also is these curved sections. You see this curved section here? This curved section here? There is an irregular array of something in here. So it's not just a sphere. There's actually something that's regular in here that's going on, even right at the core of this structure. That's actually a ball lightning gone through glass, and it's cut out a little skin of glass. And note you've got the node. You've got the south pole here and the north pole here of the ball lightning. And this is from Bichkov, I think. Anyway, so here's our top of metal, our bottom, and so there we go. And this is some SEM, and that's the image I have just showed you. Okay. Okay, so let me go back there. So what I'm saying is that the first time that I looked for something that would allow for a sort of magnetic monopole structure, that kind of like was coherent matter, I came across this work at Aalto University and this three-dimensional Skirmion Bose-Einstein condensate. And so the whole lot of concepts are joining together. And okay, so I think that's probably all we need to say there. Okay, so I'm just going to show a couple of videos here so you can see the links maybe. So there's a link there, you can look at that. I will post the links into the blog later. So this is this at Aalto University. And this is where I took some of the frames from that thing, and we are back here. Right, so this is where they're saying scientists model rare ball lightning with help from tangled Skirmion quasiparticles. So here we got the Skirmion, something that is coherent matter, and a ball lightning all combined together. And here is the kind of structure they are referring is the structure that this skirmion is. So there are multiple possible configurations of the skirmion allowed, so long as they follow two rules. Each magnetic field line is a circle and linked with every other line once. And if you follow circular paths that maintain the same spin direction inside of the skirmion, the atom will twist twice. Okay, so this is our structure with the magnetic field lines of the skirmion, and here is the kind of thing that we were looking at earlier, looked at different angles and so forth. So this is this kind of work that they are talking about. It says, ultimately, the discovery itself is exciting. We know this is going to be a big result, but it's never been seen before, said Mottonen. But then on top, we got this analogy to ball lightning, which was great. So all of these things are joining together. We are saying, and it looks like we are creating ball lightning. It looks like it is coherent matter. It looks like the ball burn sample has a structure on there that looks exactly like the structure that was made out of coherent matter in a Bose-Einstein condensate, which is said to be a three-dimensional skirmion structure. Okay. Right, let me go back to the main presentation here. So what I'm saying is also, like, if you have a Bose-Einstein condensate, it should be superfluid. And I have this slide here, which is taken from an article, which I've got the link of down the bottom here. And this is superfluidity and a Bose-Einstein condensation. And so we got figure 7 here. This is figure 7 from this document. Down here I've got the link. And what you can see in this document is this is the skirmion with the line component and the ring component. And this is the vortex ring on line. And so this looks surprisingly like an EVO type structure, doesn't it? You have your toroidal, let's say that's the toroidal current, and then you've got your poloidal here. So figure 7, two-component Bose-Einstein condensate skirmion. Schematic illustration of density isosurfaces for the ring component and line component. The circulation direction of the corresponding flows is indicated by arrows. So these are the flows, okay? And you would do this when you draw your skirmion kind of map. You would do the sort of topological flows in that skirmion map. So this is a schematic illustration of vortex ring on line in toroidal trap. So this is a toroidal trap. And so a toroidal trap is something that's able to magnetically trap. Now remember, we were talking about traps for trapping Bose-Einstein condensates. Well, this here is a toroidal trap, and it looks remarkably like the sort of thing that you might have for an exotic vacuum object structure, or, because it's the same thing, a ball lightning. So we show a constant surface of the trapping potential, okay? So a superflow green line, so this is the superflow of the condensate, with toroidal and poloidal components. So toroidal and poloidal components, okay? That creates simultaneously two types of phase singularities. Vortex line, red 1. So this is the vortex singularity. This is the singularity. And if you remember my O-Day presentation, the first slide I ever shared from that was called singularity. So we have a singularity here at the center, surrounded by vortex ring black. So we have our ring and our spot. We have our ring and our spot. We have our Ra. This is the Ra, ring and the spot. Okay? And to just join this with the concept of the EVO, I shared this also in my 2017 presentation in Copenhagen. And this is the torus, flat torus in 3-sphere. This is the kind of structure that was supposed to be something similar to what an Evo would be, as a way to contain the electrons and keep them in that state. And I think you can see that if you follow these lines round, it kind of, I think it does go round twice, or it probably meets the requirements for what was said about Evos. Sorry, first the Skirmion structure earlier. I haven't gone through with my head there, so maybe someone else would like to do that. But anyway, and here are some pictures of Evos and bead chains of Evo structures. And so you might see something a little bit similar as we move forward. Now, I'm going to try and dig up something quickly. I kind of meant to do this beforehand, but I hadn't done it, so I'm going to do it now. I want to bring up two points here, which I think are important to bring forward to explain what I want to explain. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and just bear with me, talk amongst yourselves. So we're going to have that one. Oh, I don't want that. That's rubbish. Gotta love those adverts. Give me a second. So, I think probably the first point I want to make here, the first point I want to make is 2 points from a video by Dr. Gerald Pollack, and I can see a lot of people going, yeah, I know that guy. This is about self-organization. So this is kind of like likes like. So I think Feynman coined that phrase. So you have a negative charge and the negative charge here, whatever it is, and they get attracted to each other because they force a positive charge in between until they get close enough that they repel. And then this ends up by self-organizing the structure over an area. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is, which I think is relevant for what I want to talk about here, is this. The concept of easy water, where if you have a barrier here, some sort of material, the water has this ability. Now, it's not necessarily every type of material, but it has this property where it produces an inner layer and an outer layer where you have increasingly negative charges next to, let's say, I don't know whether it's a dielectric, but anyway, this is a gel in this case. So it's got an increasingly negative, and then it goes out, and then you have effectively a double layer. So it's almost like a double layer that you would get in a plasma situation. And in fact, if you think about it, if the electrons are kind of not quite so associated with the polar water molecule as one would think they would be in a completely homogeneous area, it's almost like some of the electrons are able to freely move around, which kind of means it is slightly plasma-like in a way when you think about it. But anyway, certainly there is a difference in charge potential from the inside to next to the surface than there is to the outside. Now, there's a second concept that I want to bring up, and I need to find another video. So I don't know whether I'm going to find this one quite so easily. Let's see if I can. See if I can remember it. Maybe this will do it. Yes. Okay. So. Oh, so it's my good friend Russ Grease has done it. So excellent. So I'll show his mugshot because I've got a lot of time for Russ. It's not the first time I've seen this, but here's our friend Russ when he was doing a lot of open research, which is good. And so he created this thing where you do a high voltage and you create this water bridge here. Okay, so the water is somehow creating this bridge, having been exposed to a lot of electrons. So this is quite interesting. It has to be something. I know what you're saying there, Dan. So, but what I'm saying is that this is a surface into air, and for some reason it's able to hold the charge. Okay, so we know we have a bubble. Okay, and the bubble somehow maybe is getting charged. Okay, and so it maybe is able to hold that charge and hold the water in certain structure into the air. Remember what Ken Shoulder said. He said charge separation. Okay, that's what you're seeing in easy water, and I believe that is a good reason for why this is occurring. So I am going to suggest that if you can imagine, as I showed you, and we have recorded in our Vega experiments, we have recorded on video, in high frame rate video, we have recorded that in these conical structures, we end up with toroidal bubble, and the toroidal bubble forms these structures on the Amasa vibrator plate as well as in the ultra experiments, and that they are likely spinning not only like this, they are likely spinning like this, because if they weren't spinning poloidally, I don't believe they would be creating these conical structures. Okay, now if you can imagine that the isosurface here has electrons, okay, and they are spinning around at a fantastic speed, and they're also spinning poloidally around at a fantastic speed, well, what is that going to do? That's going to create intense magnetic fields, especially if it can get to the point where they are a condensate and they become superconducting. You have a superconducting structure which could create a very, very intense singularity of magnetic field. Okay? A singularity here. Intense magnetic field. And the same thing could be going on in the plasma, which we have seen the output of in toroidal structures in Vega experiments. So this is a cross concept between what you're seeing in Vega, what you're seeing in Ultra and in Amasa vibration systems. And I believe that the intense magnetism that is going on here and the coherence that it's causing, because what's happening in this system is it's a self-organized resonant structure. And so at the point that this has organized itself to be, it is maximum capture of the energy. And you're feeding it more and more energy. So it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the breathing that goes on, that you can see also in these systems, that may be some subharmonic. And it may be that in certain places, you're going to get more transmutation or different transmutation than you are in others, because it spends more time building the coherence in some places than others. And in other places, it's a different style of skirmionic type structure, topological structure with extremely fast moving electrons or polar molecules that are creating voltage and a current and a magnetic field. Now, I'm mixing things here, but we know that with the water drop experiment, you can create voltage like that. I think, was it Kelvin? I don't know. I can't remember offhand. Anyway, I think it's something like this which is going on. And in that context, we're going to have a look at some other Skirmion papers. and we can have a think about whether they are relevant to the points that I've made here and that we've seen in some of our experiments. Okay, so let me just get this up. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I've chucked in here, and we can go and have a look at these, and I can share these at a later time. So these are a whole bunch of different Skirmion structures, and you can see these. This is a six-fold structure, which is topological, and you can imagine that these could result in some of the structures we saw on Lion. This is a double pair Skirmion, a stable double pair Skirmion. This could be the kind of type of magnetic structure, if you've got the equivalent in a magnetic structure, that would result in the kind of things that we've been seeing actually also on Ultra. So if I go to here and I go down to here, you can see, is it on here? Maybe it's not on there. There's this kind of structure here where you've got a raised bit in the center and the two flat bits around the outside. Could that be something like you are seeing here going on? And what I'm saying is that the hydrodynamics has resulted in pinching the aluminium into this structure here. There's another example here. This is this example here. You can see it here. There's another one here, see? So you get these kind of pinched structures. Okay. So, like I say, I'll share all the links of these. So I'm not going to go through any of the maths. Don't worry. I wouldn't want to. I'll just see if there's anything useful here. So that's this particular paper with those structures. Here's a Bose-Einstein condensate. And the reason I'm showing you this is because this ties into, where are we? In Coherent Matter Waves Part 1, where you can see in our cohering, possibly as much as 12,000-year-old Sumarian structure here. This is from the Solian patent. And these peaks are the, he calls them monopole, but they're a coherent blob, but in an ordered structure. So they have these peaks where you have the peak of the coherence. So this is your singularity, this point that you've got going on here. And I'm saying that they go around here, and this is an overall coherent structure because they cluster together into something that is able to do work. And here is your yin-yang. And this is the pit, and this is the raised area on the Bullburn sample. And again, you can see this is going to become important. These are overlaid with just a little bit in the middle. And you can think of this as a kind of like bi-Skirmion. But this one is able to eat out, but it's not so effective at dumping material down or pushing it up. Can't push it up so much, but it can eat out the material here. Okay, so and this was a more close-up structure here, and here is the monopole pair here, and this is also the same structure on Solian's 2001-2002 patent, and we have, I think before that we have, oh no, it's not in this one. Okay, anyway, it's in the monopole clutch. And that's right, because I'm in the wrong one, am I? No, I'm not. Anyway, in the monopole clutch here, I shared this group structure, and this is going to be important with what we come to discuss in a minute as well. So you've got monopole or pseudo-monopole structures here in a group, in a chain of the same type. And so I think this will become important. Okay, so this is your coherent matter Bose-Einstein condensate becoming more condensate-y, and so this is where it's most condensed, and it's sharing the same wave function. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of different topologies here. Let's find something interesting. Okay, that's not so good. Okay, let's see what we got in this one. Like I say, what I wanted to do for you is have a lot more health, and I've done all of the work. But I think once you grasp this concept, you can go out and look at the body of the work that's out there, and I think you'll see probably how these things are all working. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of structures here. Let's see if we can zoom into this, maybe. Okay, so A is a Neal type, so you've got a raised bit in the center and it comes up to the side. So this might be something that gives our dimple in the center. This has the material spinning around, but it kind of has a different structure on one side. This is a pair here, and what do they call it? They call it in D. They call it, what do they call it? D. It's a biskirmion, yeah. So that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. This could be what we get in our pretzels. These are our pretzels, maybe, or even our figure of eights. So you can see how they kind of overlap. One's going one way, one's going the other. But in these cases, they both have the vector pointing down. So it might not be something like this. This one's fully going round in a loop and a point down. So you can go and have a look at these different Skirmion type structures, these topological structures, which lead through to magnetic structures. And they're actually predominantly being researched, as far as I'm aware, for data storage. So that is the size of the structures they're talking about. They're talking about extremely small structures. And when I'm showing you these structures, these are not extremely small structures. These are quite large structures. And we have seen bigger structures, and I think it'll become clear when I mention it, actually. So yeah, all these different type of topologies that you can get. And so I think that some of our material in our figure of eights that we analyzed a couple of weeks ago were affected by different topologies of the 3D Skirmion structure interacting with the surface. And it might just be the way the sound wave is hitting it. Right, now, this gets quite interesting. So why am I highlighting this? Because this is a blotch. This is a Skirmion sort of patch of loads of different Skirmions all together, forming a kind of hexagonal structure. And you can get similar ones, and I think it has it in this paper as well. Okay, not this one. Is it here? Okay, so here you can see Skirmions forming pits and peaks and troughs that also have a peak in the center, depending on the overall shape or where the thing that's forcing the topological structure is. You can also see down here that we have in the center of this trough, which has a peak, you also have a thing that has an S. Now, what does that look like? What does that look like? Let's have a look. Does that look like something like this? Does it look something like this? So you have this is the inverse. So you've got a peak and then a trough, and then you've got this S shape here. Is that something like what you're seeing here? Is it? I don't know. Maybe. So this would be the peak. This would be the trough. And then you have the S shape in there. There's a tighter one there with a much, much, much tighter central piece here. Yeah? I think that this is probably what is going on. And ever since Shoulders did his work, you know, there was a whole thing called spintronics and these Skirmion type structures. Now, this is interesting here because these are Skirmion braids, okay? Braids of nanovortices discovered, okay? And this is from October the 6th, 2021. So that would be a whole 11 days ago this was published. So we've got spiraling structures, but in a self-organized like structure. And in this case, the one is central, and these are braided. Now, what does these look like? Do they look like they could account for things like this, and this, and this? Is that something that you could imagine is going on? And what I'm suggesting is that you have a patch of Skirmion structures that are spinning on, and the Bose-Einstein condensate comes out of that. And as it comes out of that, it's either just a beam, or it's two, like you've got a bi-Skirmion, and they are spinning round, or you've got a group of them and they're twisting. And let's have a look at some of our structures that we showed in our second coherent matter wave beams. We actually talked about, did we have that in the previous one? Let me have a look there. Give me a second. Okay, I need to load up coherent matter wave beams part 2. Okay, there's a part there. That's the one. Right. So I think probably I need to show you some other examples of what the structures are here before we go forward. So this is interesting because this is a Bose-Einstein condensate and this is a Faraday wave. Now remember what I was saying when we were looking at the work of Solin. There were these radial things coming out from the explosion of a Bose-Einstein condensate structure, and it produces these radial waves. But on the radial waves, you had these other structures, which are, in my view, the Faraday waves. And we see these Faraday waves on the calcium carbonate exposed with HHO. On, if you remember, the curved and you can go and have a look at that presentation. So I just thought I'd throw that in there so you can see how this is all connecting together, and you can see probably, you know, it's difficult to understand how in 1992 Mikhail Solin knew that what he was looking at were structures that were from a Bose-Einstein condensate. It's just, but yeah, because apparently no one had actually made one until 1995. So how did he know that over that down there on his SEMs was due to Bose-Einstein condensation? I guess it's just a bit weird, isn't it? A lot of insight. Oh, now I've got to show you this, because this universal method for magnetic Skirmion bubble generation by controlling stripe domain. Okay, so with this and another presentation, another one, you're going to see how these structures mesh together, and it's going to be a bit shocking, because what are we seeing here? I said it's a magnetic fluid. What does this look like? What does this look like? What do these look like? What do these look like? Well, I'll tell you what I think they look like. They look like a magnetic fluid. And I'll tell you what else they look like. They look like the Vega Valley. They look like the Vega Valley in miniature. They look like the Vega Valley. I believe that the Vega Valley is a massive magnetic fluid condensate structure. That's what I think it has been since the beginning, and I believe that everything is confirming and pointing into that direction. Okay? And I think you're going to see a few more things before we end this presentation where it becomes very, very obvious that that is what it is. Okay? So you've got your different domains here and things. There we go. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, right. Okay, so here we go. I like this. So here we've got a skirmion, and in this case the skirmion has a point here. So you've got your kind of things spinning around, but you've also got these bits. You've got a bit that points up here and a kind of almost static point here. You've got something spinning around this way and something spinning around this way. This does look like what you are getting in the bottom of our troughs, okay? Now, if it's overset to one side, let's have a look. Let's have a look at some of the images that we were looking at from our testing under the SEM of the ultra material. Okay, so let's look at that ultra here. Okay. So, of course, we have this. Okay, so note it's slightly off to one side. Okay, is that important? I don't know, but we have this raised bit in the center. You can see the vortical structure is going around this way. The vortical structure is going around this way, and is that going around that way? I don't know, but you've got things raised up and then a bit down, raised up, a bit down, raised up, a bit down. It might be spinning around that way. How does that even work? Okay, and then this has got the dimples, so that's not so relevant here. Okay, so in this one, on this side, you have the twist coming up here, and it's kind of slightly off to one side. Again, is that reflective of a skirmion type structure in a condensate that is more like this type of skirmion topology? Okay, and over here you can see it's on one side, so it's focused on one side. These things look odd to me because when I first looked at them initially, because I thought, well, how is it only working on one side? And I think that's because that is the point at which the condensate is most condensating. That's terrible English, but you know, maybe it's going around this way. I don't know. Now in this case, this is, I believe, 5 type skirmion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's probably 5. So that is like you're getting these things from 11 days ago coming out, and I believe that has come through the aluminium like the other structure that we looked at over in where is it, in here, this one. This is coming through the aluminium, but it's in a different state, its structure. In this one, you can see again on the, when we go into the peak here, it's got a curve here, but it's on one side. Is that kind of what we're seeing here? Oh dear, it's gone. Where's it gone? It's there. Okay. So is that something that corresponds to that? Or a variation of, where it's the actual formation of the material is off the center, because potentially the coherence is mostly here, and when the condensate collapsed, it left the boron at that point. The boron fused into the aluminium. Boron fused into aluminium. Think about that. Okay, and then we have this one here. Again, where it's kind of, it's not in the center of the center. It's off to one side, but it's not on the outside. So you've got a structure like this. Now, like I say, there's all kinds of different variations on the skirmion sort of flow of material. Now, what you're looking here with the, this is the average in-plane magnetization here, if I zoom into this. This is what do they call it? Is it called a blotch? EEDE, average in-plane magnetization mapping over the depth of a skirmion bundle. So this is a skirmion bundle. Now look how small this is. Look how small this is. It's 50 nanometers. 50 nanometers. That's not big, my friends. That is really, really rather small. Okay, so this is what they're normally dealing with, and they want it to be small because they want to make, for instance, they want to make magnets, memory out of this. They don't want it to be big. Here's a whole series of blotches in a row. Now look again. This starts to look a little bit Vega Valley-ish when you get a cluster here. Here we've got 6 around a central point here. Okay. These aren't the droids you're looking for in this case. Okay, so I think this is quite a good paper. You've got a whole bunch of different, this is the Skirmion here, and higher order Skirmions. Again, in this case, you can see you've got things spiraling around, and they spiral around, but on one, it's not in the dead center. Over here, you've got something where it's kind of like these are pointing down or whatever. It's not quite the same. This is the hedgehog lattice, so you can see how it's forming these hexagons here, and the hexagons are slightly offset. Okay. All right. And this is from 2021. Very, very recent paper. Okay. So here we have a Skirmion, and you can see the flux. There's 2 types here. The Skirmion with one would be plus and one would be negative, and this is a target Skirmion where you have a bit going around in the other direction in the center. Okay. And they're talking about making memory here. This Skirmion is the one that, or bimeron, either a bimeron or Skirmion. These are the kind of structures that I believe would be creating something similar to the Pretzels as a magnetic configuration. Okay, so this is kind of the last thing that I want to talk about, but before I do, I really wanted to. Okay, so it's more configurations, group configurations. I wanted to show you. Okay, this is translating between one type to another. Okay, let me go back to. So imagine you have some of these Skirmion type structures here. You can see them here. This is somewhere between Skirmion and Skirmionium, and you have these kind of multi-structures here, and inside there's going to be some vortexes going on as well, like this blob here. And imagine that you have your material in your Bose-Einstein condensate being ejected out, as we saw in the 1999 patent that we talked about in our previous presentation, which is this one. So we've got our condensate here, and it's ejecting out the material. This is just a schematic. And it leads to this, where it's kind of organizing the material, and it's spinning it, and they're twisting around each other. Let's have a look at what that might mean for the coherent matter traveling waves that we have from our previous presentations, coherent matter part 2. So now you can look at a whole number of presentations on Skirmions, and you can have a Skirmion type structure or one that's elongated. It's elongated, and it is spinning around like that. It's actually rotating. And so you can imagine, as the coherent matter is coming out of the coherent matter condensate, and it's going through this magnetic structure, this topological structure or whatever, that topological structure is turning around, and inside it's doing its own organization. And that is leading to this DNA-like braided structure coming out here, which is just 2 sides. if you had a more complex thing, you would end up with it feeding these solitary waves coming out in these kind of... This is similar to this one, by the way. And even the M&M ones here, you could conceive how that would occur. And so I'm going to find some more examples, which we have down here. So we have this one. Now this one's interesting here because this one has two spiraling around a central one which is straight. And that to me looks very similar to this one, where we have a straight one in the center and we have two spiraling around it, right? So that is kind of like what we are seeing in this one on the bottom here. Okay? This could just be, this could be similar, but I don't think so. This one's a central one with the thing spiraling around. This is two spiraling around. These are the ones at the beginning. This is our, this is a magnetic interaction. Now, they can get within a certain distance. This is a very big one, as we saw. This one is interesting. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it is a solitary wave in its own right, and it's just got less going on in terms of its intensity. And this, in my view, is just a pure beam. This is just a Evo that is not doing anything interesting. It's just coming out as a torus. We talked about the extreme interactions, where you had things that come to something and then they bend round them, but they always seem to bend round them at a radius. And it also, I said this may be like a magnetic beam that's shooting out in front and that it interacts with it afterwards. Okay, and so that's that video. And we talked about all these, and there was this one. And if you can imagine that this has its magnetic field around it, yeah, that when this one comes close to it, it's coming out and it wants to do its own thing, but it can't. It immediately gets trapped into this one's movement. Okay? This one's coming out and immediately gets locked into this one. But they affect each other and they come apart, and then one is coming down here, and then it gets here. And I don't know whether it's because it's longer at this point, because the structure it was short over here. It was short over here, or more energetic. When it comes down to here and this one interacts with it, it orbits around it at a greater distance. Is that because the magnetic structure that is surrounding this thing and looks forward and back in time with it, is it spreading out? But anyway, after it does this 180-degree orbit, it gets to here and it just follows it behind, sort of behind in time, as it were. Anyway, so I think probably we're getting to an understanding of how these extreme interactions work, and we've got some more of these structures coming out here, and that is the pulse of those, and the famous one here, the braided structure, and the one that came out post-experiment a long time from the Baranov data there. Okay, so I think pretty much we're at a point where we've shown that it is a Bose-Einstein condensate. We've shown that there are known ways, at least on the what you can see on a transmission electron microscope when you're looking at a few nanometers, where people are studying things that are very similar, and this is cutting, bleeding edge, except they're only looking at things to make memory, and we're looking at things that are actually physically very large. we're looking at, in the Vega Valley, it's millimeters across those channels, or a millimeter across. It's very large compared to a nanometer. You can fit a lot of nanometers, or a few tens or so of nanometers into 1 millimeter. Okay, so you can see the self-organization, but I wanted to come back to wherever it was over here. Yeah, this one here, because what you've got here are these biskirmions. So it says here, we've got some up here. So magnetic configurations of the biskirmions. So you can see they arrange themselves like in a way. You have your negative and your positive topological structure, but they are magnetic. So these are the magnetic components of the skirmions. And I believe that what you're looking at here interacts with materials and either topologically changes it or magnetically changes it, or does crystallography changes to it so that it affects the polarization of light. So when your coherent matter wave beam is going through, embedded within that coherent matter wave is the substructures that are able to influence the matter that it's traveling through, or when it's in a static place. And this allows the situation you find yourself in when you are looking at this material where it's exposed in the case of our friend Dr. Roshinamas. It leaves this thing that can be seen by polarized light, because everything is kind of like randomly polarized, or it's like it's been scratched when it was made. But when the coherent matter wave travels across it, it changes the polarization. So the regular period you get here is because of one of these points. One of these points is interacting with it. Obviously, this is from a water experiment. This is from a plasma experiment. Or one of these points in this coherent matter collapsed wave structure here. These regular points that you see, here. And so... and I believe it's such an intense magnetic energy structure that it's able to organize the matter or its magnetic or its paramagnetic structure so that it interacts with light in a different way. And I'm going to share one thing that I think now we probably are getting close to a reasonable hash of a hypothesis for how it occurred. So give me just a second here. So, let me see. Okay. So first off, I believe that the reason that we are seeing these polarized areas here is because you've got a massive skirmion structure, probably a biskirmion structure here, and it's affecting the way that the light is polarized in this copper oxide. Okay, I'm saying that now. So I think this is an intensely, incredibly big, and we know exactly how big because I've measured it. So these are 100 micron across, and so if this is a biskirmion structure, we are talking 200 something micron, and this is the same as you're seeing here. So why is this important? Each one of these pairs here, and there's 3 pairs here, is 200 micron. That's because that is one biskirmion magnetic cell, like you are seeing in these structures here, and in these kind of structures with their polarization banding. And I believe that is essentially what is going on. So I think we're getting a good understanding. And then when you think about that, that kind of starts to make sense as to what you are seeing in the Vega Valley sample itself. In that when this very large image is in play, here. This is the first one I shared. And we have our two magnetic spheres here, this one and this one, which we've investigated. And there's likely another one at the center point here, which I need to investigate when I can next get to the SEM. Okay, and I think there's probably one here as well. But anyway, the point is that these are oriented, these structures, and I imagine that these are, again, structures that are about 100 to 200 microns, or 200 micron for a pair. These are ordered to the wall of the fluid, the magnetic fluid condensate. And as you can see up here, these are also twisted. So this one goes over here and this one comes under here, okay? And these are coming down to the point of maximum coherence, the maximum magnetic field. And that, my friends, I believe, is what you are seeing when you are seeing this. That is the center point here. That is the center point here of the Skirmion, the magnetic structure of the vortex ring. And so you can imagine that the outside of the structure that is forming these cell units here is an intensely magnetic superconducting structure of the sort of type that you are seeing in, is it this one? I don't know, not that one. Well, kind of like there, like you see in this structure here, where they self-organize. We've got another one in here, one of these, we've got a different picture of the same kind of concept. We'll find it in a minute. Here, these patches here. So this is kind of what you're seeing. These things here in, where are we? On the side wall of here. So this is less extreme when you're getting a little bit further out. So you can imagine that the electron condensate structure, which is organizing this wall and creating these unit cells here, is something like this, and probably bi-Skirmion pairs, accounting for these twisting groups here. So there we go. I'll have a look at your questions. I said I didn't want to stay too late tonight. I've got some important stuff tomorrow. I'm ill, but I wanted to get that out there because I believe that what we are demonstrating is a structure that is able to create an intense magnetic field, which is able to be coherently, with a high Q factor, is able to be resonantly pumped extremely easily using sound. And this is what's happening in Roshinamas' vibrator plates. And therefore we have a 100% proof in the ultra experiments that Roshinamas' device can do transmutation. There's obviously a long history of transmutation from ultrasonics from Roger Stringham. I believe that probably all of these systems are producing these structures from time to time. But when the material is locked in place, you get the most extreme effects because it's pushing and it's pushing and it's pushing into that resonant location with a high degree of efficiency, and it's just building and building that system. And so the magnetic strength is increasing, the condensation is then getting more intense, and I think it produces, well, we know that it's producing the magnetic cores that we are seeing in Vega. It's also producing in the ultra experiments. So largely the same process is going on. And so we can pretty much say that Dr. Roshinamas, your technology works. What happened in 2003 when you created nearly every element in the periodic table, and what Leclerc did when he created every element in the periodic table and the radioactive elements as well. That's pushing it too far. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be using a hydrosonic pump because it will kill you. Because where you've got a cavitation point and it just pushes on that cavitation point, the coherence will build and build and build and build and build, and when it collapses, then you're going to get all of the elements in the periodic table. But I believe that with choosing the right metal thickness and choosing the right vibration energy and the right duration, you could target particular elements based on the elements you start with. I think this is just it's literally the dawn of an old age. It is so frigging amazing. It bears all kind of you just kind of have to keep checking. But I believe we are creating the same thing that they're creating in spintronics, in Skirmion type things. I've made the argument at the beginning of this, and I've been making this argument very slowly since my presentation, I guess, in 2017 in the matter manipulation presentation in Copenhagen. And so but now you're literally getting papers right now that are catching up with the data that we've been sharing over the last couple of years from physical experiments showing what looks like coherent matter traveling waves at very large macro levels, way, way beyond anything that's considered by scientists that are all published in the biggest journals. And Dave, congratulations, absolutely fantastic work. Henk, congratulations, absolutely fantastic work. Dr. Roshinamas, legend. Suhas Ralka, couldn't have done it without looking at your work. That was my first strange radiation in 2017, observed on plastic, on large format 10 by 7 inch photographic plates, on plastic, both in contact and not in contact, and in a masked webcam. So if I had not seen that, I would have not gone on this journey. So thank you, Suhas Ralkar. But, everything's coming together. You have someone that's claiming that they can make this large macro scale quantum object. So where is it? I shared this a number of months ago. It was here. Let's show you here. Physicists harnessed thousands of molecules into a single quantum state. This was on the 28th of April 2021. Wow, it's so big. Oh dear. All right, well, there we go. You've gone way, way, way beyond that, Henk. This structure is for me, one of the most special structures I've ever seen in my life. And we are going to make a book about it. This is it's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing what this means. And I'll tell you now, if you get ferrofluid and you put a high magnetic field, it arranges itself into structures like this, where you get these pointy bits and the bits go off into a point and then they end up being balls like you see over here. This is acting like something that's a ferrofluid. However, this is just copper, which is paramagnetic, and zinc, which is diamagnetic, and it actually arranges itself with the carbon in the central area here. So when you look at these, and we've shared this data before, but you get a carbon coating here, mostly because it creates this diamond, which I talked about. That's what all these little flecks are on the top of the center of these vortex cores. And we know why that produces the diamond. We've seen that in the work of Roshinamas and so and others. So we've got the carbon here, and then it goes through the copper oxides, and then we've got the zinc more concentrated out here. So the most diamagnetic material is moving away from the intense magnetic structure that is down here. And then you get balls over here. So if you get ferrofluid, this is what you see. And I have an unimaginably beautiful ferrofluid image, which maybe I can share with you now, and that might be the last image of the day. And I will do a separate presentation on this and the correlation between this and the Vega Valley. But I think probably it's the right time to to share this image. I have permission from the author, so let me just see. Here we go. And then I can talk about probably the structure of the Vega Valley. Okay, so I'm going to copy this in. Just give me a second here. Oh, I wanted to show this to you for months. So look at this structure. Look at our beautiful, beautiful Vega Valley here. Right now, you've got to imagine that where is it? Where the cell units that you see here, these cell units are the result of something that's it's just about in contact with on the magnetic condensate. Now, the ferrofluid structure I'm just about to show you right now is the inverse of that, because it's actually got the cell units on the outside. I actually have this in beautiful resolution. And here we go. This is from Lyndon Gledhill, and it's photography, and this is a ferrofluid structure. And obviously it's a magnetic fluid on a substrate. And then you can see that it has these magnetic cells in it with these central spots. Not always. So you've got to imagine that something like this is what you can see here. Something like this is the magnetic electron condensate or itonic condensate, which is then producing the structure outside of it. So what you're in black here, maybe if I inverted this, it would give a better idea. But this is the structure, and you can see the cells that it's generating. So this is actually just a real photograph of self-organization in a ferrofluid. So when I have the image here, you can imagine that if I zoom in a little bit, that this bit here is the electron condensate, but it's obviously got a lot more units, cells, that is sitting in here. And just rotate it in your head if you can. In fact, I'll rotate it round. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. It's gonna ruin the image. Okay, all right. I've done it here for you, so you don't have to do any mental gymnastics. So it's the wrong way round. Oh God. Oh well. I've done the best I can. Okay. So you can imagine that this thing here, if it had a lot more cells on the ferrofluid here, that would form this structure here. And right at the center point is where you are synthesizing the diamonds that you see sparkling all over this structure here. Oh, I'm going to spin that round again. And once more. There we go. So there we go. Okay. So, I will see if you've got any questions. And if not, then I will go. You can even see how these kind of caldera and thing form. Hi, Pyroman Dan. Yeah, I think we're getting to the bottom of how this ancient technology worked. You know, it's going to be used for unbelievable memory storage, but this is also for matter engineering. And I will talk about how this can be used for tunneling, mining. If we'll talk about all the subjects you want to get onto, but I think we're pretty much nailed in my view, and you know, and you know, I'm open to other opinions and more clarification, but I think the job is mostly done. You know, the hard work's done. It's just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Thanks, Son of Overbook. I think everything in the physical plane was used for creating this. Yes, I think, and I think you can build solar systems, as I said after the BEM conference a couple of years ago. I think we can use the energy in the ether, and you can build solar systems, and you can pause your own life and come back in 4 billion years' time and see where the gold is. Don't need to answer this question in the video, but if you're willing to print an image, please email the Ether20. Do you want to produce? It will produce a field like that of sacred geometry. Okay, that's interesting. Yes. Well, I please ask. I ask people because I've got one video to share, and I can't remember where I saw this would have gone through to YouTube, and I need to check, and I will credit the person, but I haven't got the credit right now. But this is from a few days ago. This is someone called Marcus Garst, and he is presenting from KIT. I think it's in Germany. And strongly correlated electron systems, quantum phase transitions, and magnetic skirmions. But I think the best part of this presentation is where he is talking about, well, firstly, you've got this, where something is going over the top of the skirmion and it twists. And then you've got these different churn numbers, which produce different structures. So here you can see, so here's this, what I was talking about earlier, where if you had this kind of like, this is going around counterclockwise and this is going around clockwise, I think. But it's elongated. And you can imagine that if this was, the coherent matter was passing through a skirmion structure that was spinning around like this, you would then get those braided structures. And what I'm saying is that you have this overall coherent matter structure. And on that overall coherent matter structure, you have subunits which have these magnetic domains, which are like the ferrofluid that I showed you, but smaller. But they are, in my view, very large relative to the sort of skirmions they're talking about in all the fancy Bantz papers. They are very large, and they are forming the Vega Valley. Now, if you imagine that ball lightning, that coherent matter structure, there is a part that breaks down, and we know this happens. If you go and look at Aritskev, he has the ball lightning forming above his exploding foils, and then that dissipates into smaller ball lightning. This is what happened in our 10 yen coin. The big ball lightning formed smaller ball lightning, and that did the 2 oxygens to sulfur. So we know that this occurs. And what I'm saying is that this thing maybe gets a little bit over-energized and something gets destabilized. There's maybe a kink instability on one part as it's trying to get bigger or go to an X-quanta or something. And something blows out. And when it blows out, it gets passed through a structure which it's nearby, and that is spinning, and it may be one or other of these structures. So this is a triple one, maybe with a central core. This is a double one. These are ones that are just orbiting around. So they create soliton waves, or solitary waves, that are coherent matter, as much as the coherent matter is released from the condensate, but is released through this structure that then orders its flight into this soliton structure. And so in here, he actually has a very, very good demonstration that is his work, and it's bang up to date, because this is on the 13th of the 10th. So this is how cutting edge this is. This was presented 5 days ago. Yeah, 5 days ago. Okay, so he's saying that out of the center of the Skirmion, you get these magnetic strings. And in my view, that this is the singularity at the center of the structure. And that's where we are, depending, in this one, it is in the center, but sometimes it's off to the side, depending on the configuration. And he's got this wonderful image, which we'll share here in a second when I get to it. So in this case, you've got counter-rotating vortices coming out here. So those people, I can hear them saying, Berkeley currents, Berkeley currents. Okay. This is the... So here's where you have a couple of Skirmions that are interacting, and whatever it is going through, but I'm going to call it our coherent matter from our coherent matter condensate. And I'm going to kill the audio here, and I will give the link to this, and you can go and review it in your own time. So I just need to drop the audio volume on here. And so here you've got a Skirmion, but here you've got a Skirmion that's not quite central lined. And what that does is it causes a kink, and the kink travels along. And so, you know, this looks a lot like, you can imagine... so he's got this wonderful animation next. Here, if it goes to it. Just wait a second. Marcus Gerst, thank you very much. Probably we should send you some of our coherent matter traveling waves. It'll melt your brain. Okay. Where's he got it? Is it over here? Where's he got it? Oh. Okay, it's there. So let's go back. It was there. Just wait for it to come. Not so easy to move forward and back. We'll wait for it. There we go. So this is a beautiful animation. So just to let you know, this is an 80 nanometer section. And this is looking along the path of the string, the Skirmion string. And this is looking on the cross section. So this is the cross section view of the topology of the, I think it's the magnetization profile. So this is the magnetic flux around the string. So as I'm saying, our interactions, our extreme interactions, is a thing comes along and it doesn't feel any magnetism. It doesn't feel any magnetism. This is what I'm saying. Is it's an event horizon. It gets to a point where the magnetism interacts and you get it orbiting around it. That is what, in my view, is going on with these coherent matter traveling waves when they are interacting in those extreme interactions. And here you've got it going here in this direction. So this is the in line. And so if I press play here, you can see this solitary wave comes along. So this is our coherent matter traveling wave in my book. And so you can see how the Skirmion structure, the magnetic structure, is moving around. And this is the mark it makes in this line. And if you look at this, this looks a bit like, you can imagine, a strange radiation track. And you can imagine that this is polarizing the matter in such a way that when you shine the polarized light on it, you would see it here, but you wouldn't see anything here and here. And so I believe that that is why we are only able to see our tracks, or we see them most clearly. It wasn't this hunch that gave me it, by the way, and I'll talk about that at another time because it's a whole other subject. But it was a different thing that gave me the hunch. But I'll just play this because if it's gonna go full screen, it's not gonna go full screen because I've got that full screen. No, it's not gonna go full screen. Oh dear. My computer's frozen now. No. Okay, just put that down there, and I will go here, and I will go here. Give me a second. Oh, what happened there? Oh. It's gone. It's gone. Well. No. Okay. My machine's frozen. There we go. I managed to close it somehow. And we are looking at... What are we looking at? I don't even know now. I've lost my thread. my thread. Oh yeah, sorry. Back in the room, I'm looking at this image. Honest, I really am. This one here. So what I'm saying is, as the coherent matter comes through here, and it has this wave function on it, it is organizing the matter such that it appears when you look at it with polarized light, you can see the direction. So essentially, like, this has also got the same kind of light going on it, but because the material is randomly ordered, it doesn't look anything special. There is some sort of brushing going on because it's steel, so it's called probably brushed steel, so you can see some lines running in this direction. But this is very clearly very precise. And these points here, as I said, I believe are probably where you have something that is organizing the matter in such a way that it is totally reflective at these points. And it's probably something like one of these points here. So I think probably I've laboured that point to death. So yeah, so you can imagine that this is the coherent matter wave. This is the event horizon around it. So he's done this little glow. It's a beautiful graphic, Marcus, fantastic graphic. And you've got this area field around it represented here. And this, for me, would be how it's interacting with the material and leaving its mark on there in such a way that it leaves this kind of strange radiation track or coherent matter wave, traveling wave interaction. And so I'll just play that. He's probably got it running a couple of times. Here it comes again. So you've got straight, straight, straight. Warm. Okay. Dan, in both cases, I believe that whether it doesn't matter whether you're working in hydrodynamics or and when I say hydrodynamics, it can be a fluid of liquid or fluid of gas or the ether. The concept is the same, and I think the underlying thing that's doing the work is the thing behind magnetism, and that is the thing that's ordering the matter. So in every case, it's the same underlying thing that's doing the work. Would be a lot closer if we could work to converge my side of the research with the MFMP side of it. Well, great, yeah, it'd be great to see what you have, Dan. Sorry, Jonathan Berry. Axel, we still have a long way to go, so don't become complacent. I'm not becoming complacent. The reason I wanted to get this out the door is because I wanted to give a full explanation that is easy to demonstrate for Roshinamas, and because so I didn't finish. Essentially, we have until the end of the month, end of December, to put our proposal in, and from the view of doing the electrolysis with the vibrator plates, when you're doing the electrolysis with the vibrator plates, that will also be dealing with the tritium, because the tritium is the most unstable element isotope in there, so it's going to want to decay. Plus, when you electrolyze water, the protium and the deuterium fractions come off preferentially over the tritium. So as more water is put into the electrolyzer, there'll be a higher and higher concentration of tritium. So the probability of the vibration system of doing the remediation before it's even electrolyzed gets higher and higher. And then we put that on the calcium carbonate, and we've demonstrated that that does the Michael Solin coherent matter transmutations in that way, and we can deal with the radiation that way. And anything that comes out, you know, we can do an assessment of the radiation there. So you're getting a 2-for-1. And as more water is processed, the efficiency goes up. So the efficiency in the case of the removal of tritium goes up in the vibrator system. But Roshinamas didn't have a mechanism for how this works. We have not only what looks like a plausible mechanism, we have a test that you can do for around about $30. And so I expect that it's very easy to demonstrate, and that it ties in with the literally bleeding edge in both coherent matter and condensate research, and the absolute cutting bleeding edge of Skirmion research, which are related to ball lightning, as I said about in the start of this presentation. And what they do to matter explains the observations we have observed both in vibration systems and in the Vega system en masse, completely done. There is obviously an immense amount of work to do, but coherent matter in the form of ball lightning, Takaaki Matsumoto suggested in the mid-90s that this could remediate nuclear waste. This was his lifelong passion to do. It's going to remediate nuclear waste. We know that HHO can remediate nuclear waste because we have seen it take heavy matter in the form of tungsten and fission that and produce edible elements out of it. And so not only could we have the TUFA for dealing with the tritium from the Fukushima, they could decide at some point to take the soil that's contaminated and millions and millions and millions and millions of tons in dumps, in bags, and also the actual core material and parts of the reactor could be processed by using the gas. So the gas generators could form multiple functions, but initially they would focus on dealing with the radioactive tritium laced water. So so it's just nice to see how everything fits together, and it's like nature seems to want to do this self-organization almost every opportunity you give it. And I will talk about how this fits into natural phenomena like lightning and hurricanes in the coming weeks, and then that will feed through to things like anti-gravity and propulsion, and these things will become so obvious. And I will use images that I've already shared and discussed from my first visit to Suhas Ralkar in India in early 2017. I think it was March the 3rd, 4th or something like that. I'll use those images, which are absolutely critical to this overall understanding, and you'll just know it is and how it works. And there's 1,000 lifetimes, 1 million lifetimes of work to do, but it is simple technology. It really is. It's crazy simple. And it's just amazing how they managed to keep people from discovering it before. And by the way, it's just a realization, and it's just a rediscovery. It's just eternal technology, and it is what they used to use on this planet. Our species, used to use on this planet. And we don't need to worry about global warming. We can fix that. We don't need to worry about elements being running out. We can fix that. We don't need to worry about killing off everyone but 500,000 people on the planet, because the carrying capacity of the planet will be far higher. Plus, we can colonize the solar system and probably other planets and other galaxies. Other solar systems as well. So we need to stop with the rubbish and start taking this seriously and realize and come to terms with the implications. And it's going to be a fun journey, really. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, you can use it to fit, back fit. Jason, you're not going to win a debate by trying to go against everyone that's paid to have a particular position. What you need to do is make the argument null, i.e., it doesn't matter. Everything that you're trying to remove that you're saying is the reason for something occurring, it's irrelevant anyway, because there's a much better technology that can deliver everything everyone needs in abundance. And it doesn't do the thing that you're saying, not you, but the people that propose, plant food is causing the end of the world. It deals with that argument at its root. It literally chops it off at the base. Yes, we can. You can once. What I would like Japan to do is to show that Roshinamas and Takaaki Matsumoto, with the understanding of Teknova and Mitsubishi, who did their work with calcium oxide layers, Japanese technology can solve a problem that has been long-standing for the world. There's a lot of uranium, actually. There is a lot of uranium, and there is a lot of thorium in the world. We can make reactors. Now, thorium, everyone thinks, oh, that's safe. No, you need a neutron source to make a thorium reactor work. So there is radioactivity involved. There's neutrons and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to get hot materials. What this technology will do, or this family of technologies will do, is remove the barriers that are normally there to prevent many small nuclear reactors being everywhere, with inbuilt safety and clean-up devices. So, you can have like a 10 megawatt reactor running every town. And so if a particular disaster happens in one town, if that happens like in Fukushima, it knocks out like 10-20% of a whole country's electricity. But if every town has a little reactor that fails safe, and if you want to clean it up, it's a very quick job to do with this technology, then we don't have a problem with energy. And all of that is carbon free. And so we can remove all of those nonsense arguments that are being used to suppress the ability of humanity to have long life and pursuit of happiness. So Gordon says, clearly a common underlying something is causing this electromagnetic, perhaps. It's electronuclear collapse. So you just need to get the condensate to a level of intensity with the magnetic structure to an intensity, with the electron density to an intensity, and it will self-collapse. So you just need to look at the 2003 paper by Vysotsky and Adamenko, or you need to look at the 1990s work, or 1999 work of Matsumoto, or Ken Shoulders, or you name it. It's a self-collapse process when you get past the threshold. Okay, I do have to be getting a good night tonight. So thank you for listening to me. Please share this far and wide. I hope that the presentation that's going to be going on the 21st and 22nd in America, they can take this work seriously. I know that they have the slides from Azizi with them, and I know several of the people there. So, like I say, I'll send them some information, but you can lead a horse to water. So this was Skirmion, and we looked at my first slide that I shared of a pseudomagnetic monopole structure, and it was a Skirmion structure that this was based from. And then the second time I came across, or rather shared concepts of skirmions, was in this, which was a synthetic electromagnetic knot in a three-dimensional skirmion, which they said is ball lightning like. And this is the same structure, I believe, that caused this feature on the ball burn sample, which was made in 1986. This was from the previous presentation where we were talking about making coherent matter and then methods for making that coherent matter to travel in a coherent matter wave. So I call this coherent matter traveling wave. And we talked about something causing polarization on this regular structure on a steel plate. And I said that I would talk about how that occurred in the future. I will again reiterate that I will talk about sometime in how I came to the conclusion that I needed to be looking for that a long time ago, which was obviously before any of this work was done on Vega and even much work on Ultra. But anyway, and we have a traveling wave beam here from Dave Boutelier and a collapsed coherent matter wave here from Henk Urian. And this is my first or second Ultra experiment, and then just chucked it under the microscope. And I wanted to explain why these structures tended to be offset and why we got these S shapes on here. It was obviously some sort of torus. We knew that because we had observed it actually on high-speed photography. But not always did you get the peak in the center here, and not always did it seem like a torus. So there was some other things going on. But anyway, certainly the same sort of structures were observed with a self-focusing point on Amasa vibrator technology. And again, this is a perfect figure of 8 with exactly perfect spots. But this is slightly not perfect, and these are less perfect. This is even more unperfect, and you've got something traveling around in a splat here, not a perfectly located spot here. And something came out, and it was toroidal and poloidal in nature. And I'd seen this before and shared it in 2017 in Copenhagen. We had this structure, which I now understand to be a collapsed coherent matter traveling wave. And it has this toroidal and poloidal structure here, which kind of blends in to the overall mass. And this is essentially almost entirely silver, where it is not nickel. And it's in from nickel sulfate, so you can see how maybe it was synthesized. And then I talked about how this structure, this vortex ring on a line, which is basically the same structure as is given as the structure for ball lightning core. And in fact, this looks very much like the structure of the Paul Collock model of ball lightning. It has this magnetic singularity in the center here, and you have the toroidal and the poloidal structures. This is the ring and the spot, the ring and the spot. And of course, you've got two of these. One will go one way and one will go the other way, and that creates these pseudo-magnetic monopoles when they cluster into larger structures. Anyway, so here's the components, the vector components on the ISO surfaces. And this structure here and the other one that I talked about earlier was very similar to the T. Banchoff concept for how a EVO is structured. And then we looked at these structures here of EVOs from that 2017 presentation. And then went through a whole bunch of slides. And then I revealed that the inside structure of these on the Vega Valley, in my view, is organized by an intensely magnetic structure that forms into these cell units, and that these cell units are the same but inverse of these cell units in ferrofluid. And then I compared the structure here with the polarized sections here, and showed that they are very large. These are 200 microns, and they are the same size as the 200 microns. This is 3 pairs here, and that I said that these were likely to be Skirmion pairs. And there's a whole bunch of other things that I will share somewhere here. Here's a thing where you've got the structure of like a coherent matter traveling wave. Like it's just drawn out, and here's one where you got a flat bit and a squiggly bit. And in fact, that video, if I show you here, I didn't actually show you that, but he has ones later on where they. So this is actually in hydrodynamics. So you've got the soliton traveling along the vortex filament. So this is a hydrodynamic equivalent of what we are showing in the plasma in the work of Henk and David. And it's also, you've got your vortex there. But he has these solitons here, where you've got a little structure that's a kinky down there, and it goes up and then it goes down, and it's got a big kink. And I believe that it would be something like this, where you've got a current-driven instability of the Skirmion string, but in my view, this is the coherent matter that's come out of a Skirmion configuration, which is destabilized in some way. And this leads to your M&M tracks that we have seen. So if I go back to here, coherent matter waves part D, and we look at our extreme thing. So I'm just going to bring this up here so you can see. Sorry, I wanted to show this and I didn't show it earlier, so it's just as well I'm going through this. So these kind of odd kind of squiggle ones sometimes that you have here, like this structure here, would be a couple like this, but mixed in together. Maybe I can go. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. I want to go. No. Excuse me. I'm going to go there. So we got another M&M track here. So I think these things can be formed by the way that the coherent matter is ejected from the coherent matter condensate. And the interaction here is because of the event horizon on the particles, on the coherent matter in the spin area around it. Like a magnet has a fall off, and if you get two magnets close to each other, they won't work, and then they will work completely. And that's kind of mostly it, really. Yeah, and I showed about the polarization, didn't I? That's where I was doing. Yeah, so this one. Yeah, okay, so I said it was a magnetic fluid, and okay, so there's your kind of polarization. If I show you, yeah, you got your polarization. These are the biskirmions with your negative and your positive, and that these form these material organization structures, and so I believe that's what you're seeing. This may even be something like you're seeing on the solin and calcium carbonate things, and I believe that this is affecting the light. And I think, is it this paper or the previous one? No, is it that one? Anyway, one of them is showing the fact that yeah, so you get these organizations. These are your cell units, and somewhere down here, is it in this one? No. Well. Anyway, I showed the fact that it forms these structures, which so it's this one here. Yeah, so in this one here, this is basically the Vega Valley structures that you see here. But obviously these are very, very, very small structures. So I think, what's this? This is 2.2. Is it 2.2 nanometers? I don't know. They're not big. These are very, very small structures compared to our Vega Valley. Our Vega Valley is absolutely monstrous by comparison. Yes, so there we go. And we'll have a look at a bigger part of the Vega Valley. There we go. When it comes up. Oh dear, so it's TIFF. It's going to take all day. There we go. La-di-da. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I will see you in the next video. I don't know when I'll do another video. It's probably when I'm going to be better. But I've got some wonderful things to share with you. Yeah, exciting times, really. So, good night, buenas noches, arrivederci, dobranoc.